and they were singing.
No, you're screeching like usual.
Okay, fine. How are you, buddy?
Well, how are you, Matt?
I am great. I got to talk with just a musical legend, Don McLean.
Yeah.
It's so cool. We are audio only, by the way, this week, so don't worry. There's nothing wrong with your site. You're seeing just the title card if you're watching this on video. I got to sit down with him at the historic Hay Adams Hotel across from the White House while he was here in D.C. for a state dinner.
Yeah. Excited to hear this interview. I've been sitting on it here, but I don't listen to him ahead of time. I like to wait and listen to the whole episode. So I'm excited, and we'll get to that in a minute. But
Yes,
speaking
sir.
of Washington D.C., we don't really talk politics here, but big news has happened. Actually, the day you recorded that interview, the U.S. Justice Department, along with 30 state and district attorneys general, filed a civil antitrust lawsuit against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. We knew this was coming, and it's for being a monopoly as well as other unlawful conduct. So I don't know what's going to happen here. Who knows how long this is going to play out? And it's interesting to see because Ticketmaster has said, and I can agree being on this side of things now, I have learned how that works. And Ticketmaster is arguing that, well, whether you deem us a monopoly or not, it's not going to affect ticket prices because the artists and their teams set those prices. However, I would personally counter argue, and I'm sure they will as well, that their Live Nation is often those management teams for the artist setting those prices. So, and then plus they charge ticketing fees. So I don't know. This is going to be a big one.
The suit alleges that Live Nation is sort of often the only game in town. You have a tour
Right.
coming into a Live Nation venue that needs to use a Live Nation platform to sell tickets. And if you're not going to use that Live Nation platform, you may not get access to the Live Nation venues to bring your tour.
Which is not right.
The interesting thing about this lawsuit is it targets that element of it, that Live Nation is bringing in unfair competition for smaller game, for the artists. It's not solely about Ticketmaster and ticket pricing. I almost want to say that the ticket pricing situation is a symptom of the larger issue rather than a cause for a lawsuit. The ticket prices can be that large because Live Nation, Ticketmaster, often the only game in town. What's interesting is there are a couple of venues now, and their names are escaping me, that use SeatGeek exclusively as their ticketing partner. So it is shifting a teeny little bit, but yes, if you want a Live Nation show, you are expected to come under these restrictive contracts for multiple years where your venue, not just for concerts and not just for Live Nation concerts, but any concert, any event, you have to use Ticketmaster in order to have tickets bought as your ticket servicing provider. And not just ticketing.
Right.
I haven't seen this talked about a lot, but parking. A lot of your parking lots have to use Ticketmaster too in order to sell the parking.
And they charge fees on top of that.
Just like a ticket.
Yeah.
So it's come to a head, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Well, right. But I think as far as what the consumer is experiencing, I think many, have always complained about the ticket pricing. And you see that all the time. I mean, on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, it's always Ticketmaster is usually trending at least once a week. And it's usually about a ticket on sale, either having been crashed, ticket prices. So what I was indicating there is that Ticketmaster's kind of coming at it like, hey, ticket prices aren't going to change because of this. And I think that's important for the listeners to know that, because as consumers ourselves, when we buy our tickets, we tend to hold off.
I disagree with what Ticketmaster said, if only because you take a macro look at the structure. If they break Live Nation up and Ticketmaster becomes its own thing and Live Nation has to divest of certain venues, that gives a lot of these people that are craving to be independent. Like, I look at Zach Bryan's Twitter feed and I look at a man imprisoned by his own stardom. I don't think he wants to use Ticketmaster. I don't think he wants his tour to be promoted by Live Nation, but he has to, because that's the deal. Right. That's how you play the bigger venues. If Ticketmaster and Live Nation separate, or Live Nation is forced to break up in another way, that will create a pathway for the artists to have a more direct relationship with their fans at these larger venues. Okay, if Tyler Childers or Zach Bryan want to go directly to the fans, they're only going to be able to play small clubs. You need a management system in place at the bigger venues to kind of handle it. But if that management system is behaving in a monopolistic way, you're going to pay a premium for that. So I think
I get that.
If they break up, it will affect ticket prices. It won't affect demand. And I still think ticket prices will fluctuate based on demand, but I think it will give the artists and the consumers a little bit more control over the market value.
Well, I hope that happens for sure, because, it's just a little ridiculous to have to force everyone to use every part of your business in order to do business. I don't know how the government didn't expect that to be created to begin with. Obviously, under different leadership, there's all kinds of conspiracies behind why that happened, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, we have a great relationship with Live Nation, but we'll just have to. We're here reporting it because they've also, this week, that was last week, right? So this week, they've been hacked again. And it looks like about 560 million Ticketmaster customers could be affected by this. It's a group called Shiny Hunters, and apparently they have a lot of high-profile data breaches that they're behind. And they've acquired about 1.3 terabytes of data. I don't know if you know terabytes and megabytes, but that's a lot. So there's full names, addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, ticket sales, order information, including partial payment credit card data that has been stolen. And they apparently run this thing called breach forms, and they have that data being sold for a one-time fee of $500,000.
No, I think it's kicking them when they're down. I think the hack was timed to this Justice Department lawsuit. I think the fangs are out for Ticketmaster. The fangs are out for Live Nation. And it'll be interesting over the next year or so to see what happens.
Yes.
I hope they don't drop it. I hope because we are in an election year, again, not to make it political, but I do. The Justice Department tends to operate outside politics. So whenever a new administration comes in, they have the purview to continue cases or discontinue things that they were pursuing. I hope that if we have a change in administration, because, again, it is an election year, that the new administration will see that this issue lies outside of politics, is important to the consumer, regardless of who's in office and what their priorities are. See, a lot of what is going on in terms of legislation and these lawsuits is because one of President Biden's stated objectives, and I do think this is a very good objective, is to get rid of junk fees. So we go to Vegas a lot. He considers resort fees to be a junk fee. He considers entertainment tax to be a junk fee. Some of the service fees that have cropped up at restaurants, even for just a twosome or a foursome dining, when you're charged after eating, that you don't know what it's for. It doesn't go towards gratuity. It's just a service fee. He considers those to be junk fees. I think he considers student debt to be a junk fee. So
No politics.
I know it's just me being silly, but I do think getting rid of things that harm the consumer, especially when we're dealing with prices as high as they are, is, and I don't just mean ticket prices. I just mean it's expensive to pay for groceries. I ordered 4 things from a grocery store the other day. It cost me $60.
Jeez.
So, it's just ridiculous. So,
Try living in California.
yeah, really. Try living in D.C. I do think anything to curb needless expenses, greediness that doesn't serve to do anything other than just purely line somebody's pockets is good. Is an
absolutely
objective good, no matter who's in office. So I do hope that if we have a new administration come 2025, they continue this case. Or we may see them settle very quickly if they want to avoid further bad press. And we'll see.
Nobody cares what the breakdown is of the price. Just put all in. That's
Right.
what we want to pay. We don't care how much is taxed, how much goes to the artist, how much goes to the promoter. We just want to attend the shows, put it all in.
Right. I think there's something psychological that happens when... I was actually very pleased when we went to see Rolling Stones in Vegas. We bought the tickets because I wanted to see them, and I'm hoping to cover them before they, and actually write about the show before they wrap up in North America. But we were in Vegas, and I said, when in Rome, it's the Stones. You never know what could happen. Made you wait in a merchandise line for 45 minutes.
Where you got in an argument with a lady, but we won't go there.
Yeah, we'll get in. We won't get into my adventures. We bought tickets, and I was actually...
Hold on. Your adventures are quite the highlight on this show, though.
Well, it was a woman taking advantage of her son's situation in a way that was quite gross and quite disgusting. But anyway, back to the point. We're at a bar midday. We're checking out Old Red, Blake's place, so music related. And I'm like, I hadn't heard if we're definitely in or not for the Stones. And I said, okay, I'm just gonna buy tickets. And I find a really good section directly above the stage, very top of the stadium, which was kind of a cool vantage point. And
yeah, our first time up
I was pleasantly surprised that I think all totaled, because they were $60 tickets, I only paid about $30 total in service fees, so $15 a ticket. So I was pleasantly surprised, because sometimes you go to buy a ticket and it can almost double or 0.5, add 0.5 of a percent to your half of what you're about to pay. So if you're going to pay $50, it could add an extra $25 in fees. So I was pleasantly surprised that it was what it was, the $30 total, and I was not upset at that in the least.
Right. I agree, but had they just done all in, you wouldn't have been surprised at paying a $15, fee per ticket.
Right, exactly. Well, that's why I say it's something psychological. If you think you're paying one thing, and then you go to the checkout, and it's more, you kind of want to run. It's fight or flight almost.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh well, screw it. I guess I got to pay it. Or, you know what? Screw this. I'm not paying it. So You're quite literally screwed either way. And and I think there have been times where the fee addition, I've been like, no, I'm not doing that. But if I were to see all of it all in, I could make a value judgment right away and decide if I want to do it. The problem is you get your hopes up, then you're like, never mind. So... But we have an interview today with somebody who's been performing and touring long before touring became a corporatized monopoly that needs to be discussed about and have lawsuits about. We don't talk about that, though. We just talk about his incredible career as a songwriter and a performer. And, of course, sat down before the state dinner. And so we kind of open it talking about the state dinner in 1999, the first time he was invited, to now in 2024. the Biden administration invited him for the state dinner for Kenya's president. And it was quite the guest list if you go and look it up. And Don McLean, he did not perform, was not honored in any way. There was no he was not on the program. He was just a guest at the dinner with his longtime partner. So without further ado, our interview with Don McLean. Talking about movers and shakers and people that influence culture, it's kind of the focus of your new album, a lot of your inspirations. Talk about the process of...
Have you heard the album?
A little bit of it, yes. It's very good.
Well, you should hear the whole thing.
Yes.
If you can do it. There's a lot of different stuff on there. And if you can make it through, you'll find a few things you really like a lot, which is always the way it is with an album, you know. Even the Beatles, I only found 3 or 4 songs I liked it the most. And the others I liked, but 3 or 4 I loved, you know.
Sure.
So that's the song American Boys Invented Rock and Roll. And that's the idea. It's really the high school version of American Pie, which is the college version. Yeah, but it's not complicated at all. It's just a simple homage. But they invented rock and roll, and that's the thing I want to get across to people, that America has invented a lot of different kinds of music, and it comes from the soil. It comes from the South. It comes from Memphis and Nashville and the Texas Panhandle, Louisiana, Arkansas, all over. You know, it does not come from New England. It does not come from the West. It comes from these places, and all the British groups and everything else have done such great music, and we have acted as if, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis and Muddy Waters and Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley were sort of the past, the forerunners, but they're not past. They're better than all those guys put together. You can't top Peggy Sue. You can't top Chuck Berry. So, and there would be no Rolling Stones without Chuck Berry, although the Rolling Stones are wonderful, and I love the fact that they're around and still doing what they're doing.
Yeah, just saw them 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, were they good?
Yeah, they were good. Sound system wasn't at the state, but I blame the stadium. But they were fantastic.
Well, that's wonderful.
They were fantastic.
It's because of the records and the songs.
Yeah.
They're still doing what they always did. They're a band that plays music. Instead of all these, you know, bombs going, well, they have that too, you know, but they play the music.
Yeah. Do you think, because of how music has changed, we will have iconic artists like the one you tribute on American Boys, that the song's mainstay for 50 years, like American Pie has mainstayed?
Do I think what?
That because of, you know, you said the Rolling Stones they play the music, they're a band. It doesn't seem to exist too much these days in modern music.
Well, because you don't have songs. We have a form of entertainment that's music-like, but it's not songs. We don't have lyrics. You don't have A Day in the Life. You know, you don't have Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall. You don't have American Pie. You don't have Vincent. You don't have these things. And with melodies that occupy your imagination. We've allowed video and TV and everything, and the fragmentation of video imagery to take over for songwriting, I think. I don't know what I exactly meant by that, but it just seems like there's all sorts of sensory input all the time that's taken the place of concentration.
And I think some of that sensory input is part of an inspiration for this song, all of the news reporting on George Floyd's passing. What spoke to you about that incident that said, I want to write about this?
Well, I've answered this pretty much the same way. I've been asked this a bunch of times today. I was surprised that other people didn't write about it. Springsteen, for example, who was always writing these songs about events. Everybody stayed away from it. And, you know, I didn't think much about it one way or the other. I watched what was going on. But then I looked at the video about a year or so ago, and I saw him calling for his mom and everything. And I remembered calling for my own mother when I was sick. I was sick a lot with asthma and pneumonia in my formative years in grammar school. And it really ruined that time period of my life, probably for my parents too. I'm sure it did. Because I'd be home 5-6 weeks with this pneumonia and asthma, and they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't have ways of managing it in those days. Turned out the thing that was happening was everybody was smoking in the house. They were all giving me this problem. If they had stopped, it would have gone away. It was smoke that I was allergic to. So, but, my mother would come in the middle of the night, when I was crying. I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and I couldn't breathe, and I was you panic. When you can't breathe and you're just dying. I mean, you don't want to wake your parents up. God forbid, they're going to get pissed off, She would run in, and I'd be red in the face and sweating and damn near dying. She'd start to cry and I'd get all upset. She was Italian, so she got very emotional. And it was an ugly situation, and she finally take a long time, calm me down. And so I know what that's like when you call for your mother. You don't have anything else that you can do. So I just realized this is a sad American story, and that's how I want to play it with this song. I don't care about making it political or racial. I believe that there are bad guys on some of these police forces that need to go to jail, and that's all. That's the story.
Yeah. You also said something in your People interview that I thought was very interesting. And it's that you're not chasing the big numbers with this. This is purely a creative endeavor. Talk about that. And
yeah, well, I'm an artist,
right.
And I do a lot of things. I have my Guernica, I have my masterpiece. I have things that are known everywhere, far and wide. I've made other hit records. I have many records that have been on the charts, and many albums that have been famous all over the world. I've sold over 50 million records. That's not a giant rock and roll number, but it's a pretty big number. And for somebody who wasn't trying, I think that's pretty amazing, because I never did anything with the idea of being successful. I did what I did because I wanted to be great, really great. I wanted the song to be great in its realm. I wanted the album to be full of surprises and interesting rather than the same song over and over. But you have to come up with the reality. When you score like I did with Vincent and American Pie, they're always looking for another Vincent or American Pie. So you immediately start by knowing that they're going to be disappointed because you're doing something else. Once you've accepted that fact and you move on, and continue what you're doing, over the years I've had the luxury of living so long. I'm 78, I'm going to be 79, and seeing 55 years of being in the major leagues. You see songs popping up here, popping up there, popping up. So suddenly now, if you read a Wikipedia site on me, you see 50 things that have happened, and it suddenly all kinds of makes sense. Rather than he had another number one, he had another number one. Well, that's how you fill stadiums. There's no doubt about that. But it's very hard to make a career the way I did, which was to, write creative songs that are all different and still manage to draw an audience.
And not only have you drawn an audience, you've been an inspiration to so many artists who do fill those stadiums and who even your contemporaries cite you as, and I believe this too, as a cream of the crop writer, artist, performer. It's a nebulous question, no doubt, but when you think of how your work has influenced others, how does it sit with you as a creator?
Well, my music has always been very personal. My music was therapy for me. I had this wonderful opportunity which came and landed right in my lap, If Michael Jackson was the way he was in singing in 1969, he wouldn't have been able to do what he did, because the times had to change in order for him to be in the right spot at the right time doing what he did, which was a dance-oriented and singing and songwriting. My thing was part of the folk thing, which was huge in the late 50s, early 60s. And then we had this little resurgence of singer-songwriters in the 70s, you know, at the same time that there was this disco thing beginning, kind of, and rock and roll was becoming much bigger by that time. But still there was this window when the Harry Chapins and the John Denvers and the Jim Croces and I broke out, you know. We were meant to break out in the early 60s sometime when the folk thing was going on, but they gave us a 10-year grace period and started breaking out for a while, and then disco came in, and then in the 80s Madonna came in and video, and that changed everything again. But, you know, the funny thing is that the technology of our business was the same really until the 1980s. There was no video. It was always records and radio. And that was it. And then video came in, and that changed everything. And now you have artificial intelligence and video, and now you have massive shows that people do which are spectacles, something right out of the Roman Empire. You know, what we were doing was an intellectual pursuit. Words, music, ideas, morality. George Floyd is a morality song. It's what's the right thing to do in terms of writing a song about an event like that. There's a moral concept to that. This was a bad thing that we did to an American. And it's a bad thing that's been done, obviously, to other Americans. They just got caught. And it happens a lot, I suppose. So what I like is, I'm not interested in whether, you know, somebody is able to become very successful by doing something that doesn't interest me. I just am interested in what I am interested in. And I found this thing that I could do, which was I love making records, write songs, make records, and perform. And that's all I ever wanted to do. I never wanted to be on television or be an actor or make movies or anything. I just wanted to do what I'm doing. That's all I wanted to do. And leave behind a lot of albums that are all different. And they're all coming out, by the way. Same company that's putting this record out, they're releasing 15 albums of mine in the next 2 years.
Oh, wow.
On CD and vinyl.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's got to be a record of some kind.
Yeah, Chain Lightning, Believers, this Western album I made, Don McLean sings Marty Robbins, all sorts of things.
That's wonderful. I want to kind of end how we began, talk about the state dinner. 25 years later, back at the White House, being asked back. Obviously, the people that run this country still think of you as a cultural icon. Want to invite you out to do this. What does it mean to you to be here in D.C., back at the White House today?
Well, I think about what it would mean to my parents more than what it means to me. I've had lots of things happen to me, but I think, what would my dad think about this? Or what would my mother think about this? You know, there have been so many incredible things that have happened. And I think they'd be, you know, in New Rochelle, where I grew up, when I quit school, you know, all my friends kind of abandoned me because I wasn't in the same grade they were anymore, and I thought I was going to be a singer. Who does he think he is? You know, Larchmont and New Rochelle were very snooty. You know, Scarsdale, all those places, very much conformist. And if you were a nonconformist, as I became, and you didn't succeed, then, you know, you were thought of as a loser. And now there's a 60-foot mural of me on the side of a building in New Rochelle. and me and Allison Keys. And when I look at that, you should look it up. Look at the murals of New Rochelle. New Rochelle has done a wonderful job of turning the city around. I own a college where I went to school, has invested millions and expanded beyond belief, and they've gotten into this program of putting up art on these buildings, and it absolutely changes everything. You go by and you see these glorious angels on the side of a building, and you go into another thing. It's like being in a whole different city.
Yeah. Well, this was amazing. I know you've got to get ready for this dinner tonight, so thank you very much, sir. I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you, Don. Such a good new album, like he said, kind of the cousin to American Pie, and it was so much fun. And good talking to you too, buddy, about Ticketmaster and all that good craziness.
Yeah, we don't do enough of these, it seems sometimes. But hey, keep watching, keep streaming, and you never know what is on the horizon.
All righty, for the Music Universe podcast, I'm Matt.
And I'm Buddy. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out at themusicuniverse.com and tmbpod.com, as well as socials at The Music Uni. Take care.
Bye.